you have a question, we have 2 microphone holders. Wait for a microphone to come over to you. When you ask your question, please start by giving us your name and your media outlet, and then ask your question. So once we get Coach seated, we will get things rolling here.
Okay.
You ready, Coach?
Sure.
All right. We'll start in the back. Go ahead, Michael.
Thank you. Coach Michael Luongo, AP Broadcast. Talk about this challenge coming up tomorrow night in this round, especially against North Carolina, and what's the keys for your team tomorrow night?
Well, it's a great challenge because, I mean, they don't put anybody out on the court that can't defend at a high level or score at a high level. And I think one of the things that separates this Carolina team so much is the way they pass the ball. So it all starts with your transition because they get out and run. The only thing that in our league that is close to this is Iowa when it comes to how quick they get out after a made basket. And Carolina just keeps putting more forwards out that can continue to get out. They do such a great job with their first 3 steps of getting out on the break in every area and throwing the ball ahead. So you have to get back. I mean, there's no you can't be in the middle of the court. You can't be wondering who you have. You can't be thinking about who's going to get the rim. If you're first, you've got to get the rim. And the other thing that they do such a great job in is not just the offensive rebounding in the half court, it's the offensive rebounding in transition. So everybody's got to not only get back and stop the ball, be protective of the rim and the shot, but you got to get back and find a man to box out. And then their offensive rebounding is astounding with what they do in the half court. And the key for us offensively is to get great movement, have great decision making on the break, whether it's the break is there, whether it's not. But you cannot give them live ball turnovers. They do as good a job as anybody in the country at turning your turnover into a dunk or a layup. And they have a lot of length, and they try to really shrink the court because of the way they come off the wings and because of the length of the forwards. So there's no question that decision making and all-out hustle, with a purpose, getting back defensively, and then just being really ready to rebound constantly are going to be keys to the game.
All right, we'll start in the back row, seated right here at the end. Mark.
Coach, Mark Narducci, the Philadelphia Inquirer. A lot of times if people don't star right away, they get impatient. But Yogi, his freshman year, averaged under 8 a game. Could you just talk about his evolution from them and what he has grown the most in,
Sure.
and where you see him maybe even for the next level?
Well, you know what Yogi did such a great job of? He was one of the best players in the country his senior year in high school, and he won 2 state championships and finished the runner-up for a third as a sophomore. And he came in and completely immersed himself with his teammates because we had guys like Victor Oladipo and Cody Zeller, Christian Watford and Jordan Hulls and Derek Elston were seniors. And he was a tremendous leader in his own right for us with the way that he delivered the ball, the way that he defended, made open shots. And he did a fantastic job with that. And what he continued to do over time was get more and more confidence scoring the ball, more and more confidence defensively. One of the great workers I've ever been associated with when it comes to not only how hard he practices, but what he does extra. And what he's done this year is he's totally taken his leadership to another place. And I think that's what's made him even that much more of an incredible player because he not only leads his teammates, but he shares, he talks to them constantly. And Yogi is a very, very smart player, smart person, but he's a very, very smart player. And sometimes when guys are really smart, they don't always understand how much you have to share your knowledge with your teammates. And he does an excellent job of that. And I think in turn, he's been impacted so much by them, not only because the other guys are talented, but because he feels that confidence back from them because he sees it come out on the floor. So I think here's a guy that has always had, he's been a known player back in the Midwest since probably the 5th grade. And what he's done is to do whatever it takes for his team to be successful. And this year he's at a high. And I think his next coach in the NBA is going to be very, very happy with the player that he's going to get because Yogi is not only a guy that can make the NBA, but he's a guy that's going to be able to impact teams going into April, May, and June. And that's what you really want the deciding factor of a player to be. Not are they draft eligible, not can they make the NBA, but can they go in and really impact a team. And I think he's heading there.
We have one 4th row, and then we'll get a couple up here in front. So go ahead, Ed.
Tom Ed Barkwist from Daily News in Philadelphia. There's a lot of history in Philadelphia with this tournament, and certainly with Indiana. What is your sense of that and the 81 game for sure? What's your sense of the history in Philadelphia?
Oh, I think it's tremendous. And when you look at the national championships that have been won here, they've heard about that this week. I wish we could take them and tour the Spectrum. We should go take a picture outside in the lot there. We had a great day today. We went and practiced at the Palestra, and they'll understand how big that is. To me, that's a bucket list deal for me, for us to be able to get in there. And that was fantastic. But they know the history, and they see the pictures, right? Because the Sports Illustrated cover of Isaiah Thomas hangs in our locker room in a full, size poster, and they know the history. But they're basketball fans, so they understand that Philadelphia has got great basketball. It's one of the great basketball cities in the world, let alone the United States, and not just because of the history, but because of the way people keep honoring the tradition by the great teams that are here, and by the fact that so many really good players and coaches keep coming out of this area. So I have only played in this building as a coach one time when I was at Marquette. It was a big Monday against Villanova. It was incredible. I told them from the very beginning, they have no idea how exciting it's going to be in that arena, but it's like everything else that we do, whether it's history, whether it's being in this level, we have got to stay absolutely locked in to what we're here for, which is defending and competing against an outstanding Carolina team tomorrow night.
Go here in the front, right in front of Coach.
Brett Friedlander, Wilmington Star News. Tom, for those of us from North Carolina who haven't seen a lot of your team since December 3rd, in what ways have you guys improved the most since that night at Cameron?
Well, I don't know if there's been any team that has been held more accountable to what they did from December 2nd before, than this team. And we've had to live with a lot of that back home. But the good thing for these guys is they don't let it affect them. All they did is get better. And we weren't very good that night. And we're almost at 3.5 months now. So it's just crazy that we continue to have to look back at that game. Because I'm not sure we learned a lot from that game. What we learned from that game is we need to be more aggressive. What we learned about ourselves is that we control that aggressiveness. We control our ball movement. We control our ability to not only be connected defensively, which we've really become, but to really get out and run. And as poor as our defense was early on in the year, our running game was equally as bad because we weren't getting enough stops. We weren't getting out and playing fast enough. And really, pre-Morehead State, which was December 5th, the one game that we really did it right was in the Creighton game. And we played really well that night against a good team at home. And then we went to Maui, and we didn't play as well. But we didn't move the ball as well, and we weren't as connected defensively. But I think everything is continuing to improve because the fact of the matter is that guys continue to get better at Indiana. And they don't just get better through practice, and they don't just get better through schemes and X's and O's. They get better fundamentally. And it doesn't matter if you're Yogi Ferrell, who was a McDonald's All-American, or some of our freshmen like OG and Juwan that were mildly recruited. They were recruited, but they were mildly recruited. You get better, and eventually you really learn that you're going to have, you are responsible to impact your teammates, and not only on the offensive end, but the defensive end. And I think that's been the biggest thing for us. And we've never lost 2 games in a row, so they're absolutely resilient. They learn from their mistakes. They build on their successes. And there's never been a time where I walked into practice or walked out of practice thinking that we had some guys that were full of themselves. We've not had that at all. And I think that's got a lot to do with why we're here today.
We got a couple here in the second row. Let's start with Adam, and then we'll go to Shannon after that.
Hey, Coach.
Adam.
Adam Zagoria, SMY. You mentioned Yogi with the NBA. Just your thoughts on the new draft rules and how it might help some of you guys on your team, like maybe Thomas, and also your thoughts on Coach Calipari saying yesterday he's going to put his whole team, including the walk-ons, in.
Yeah, I don't have many thoughts on what he did. I haven't read that story, but we're all part of the same group that that was involved behind the scenes in these decisions, or pushing it to get it to this point. And I think it's really good. But we haven't spent a lot of time. I understand the new rules, but we haven't spent a lot of time on that. And so we'll get to that. We'll get to that. And hopefully we don't have to get to that for a while. But I think anything that allows them to make the best decision possible, to get the best level of exposure. But it still comes down to this. There's still very little real, honest, truthful, unfiltered, non-agenda-driven feedback. And the whole key is to get that feedback, because so many mistakes are made because people get into the other part of it. And there's so many opinions and voices, and everybody's got an idea on it, but there's very, very few decision makers. And the trick is to really understand what the decision makers see get your people to understand that, which we've been pretty fortunate with that at Indiana, and then build from there. But that's the most important thing, and I do love the new rules, and hopefully they're here to stay, and we'll see how it goes.
All right, Shannon.
Shannon Ryan, Chicago Tribune. You mentioned OG being mildly recruited. Just wondering if you could explain, how he's gotten to this point, how he's grown this season. And it seems like, at least the last couple games, he's had like a really important play or a high energy play. Just what's he bringing to the team right now?
Well, he's really brought that since right before Christmas, and then going into the Big East season, with the culmination of James Blackman getting hurt. Well, OG was already going to play. I mean, it wasn't like James Blackman's injury affected him from getting minutes. What it did is it increased his role, because it made us bigger when James went out, because we had one less true backcourt player. But at the end of the day, OG is being developed that way. And OG is a guy that it's not about positions, and it's very little about positions with any of our guys, because if they want to play in the future, it's very little about positions in the NBA. And it's very much about being multidimensional, versatile, skilled, being able to shoot, being able to defend different people. And OG is fitting that bill. But what happened for him in December is he really learned how to sustain intensity. His work ethic has been strong since the week he arrived at Indiana. And it just continued to get stronger. The other night, Sunday night, we're not practicing Sunday. I'm in there working. It's 11 o'clock at night. The music's going. There's Juwan and OG. They left sometime after 1. I mean, that's just the level of work ethic that they have, that they want to be in the gym getting better. So he's got a tremendous passion, but he's learned how to sustain the intensity. He's learned that he can do more things defensively than he ever realized. He's a good shooter, and he's learning more and more about the spacing of the game, the passing of the game, making decisions and reading, and he's very, very humble and wants to get better. And so when you've got those combinations, you can't help but have success.
We have one final question. We're in row 4. Bob, just raise your hand real quick, Bob. Yep, go ahead.
Bob Cooney, Philadelphia Daily News. You talk about your team being resilient, and you have a fourth-year point guard. Just talk to that. Like, how much does it, in this day and age, how much does that mean, having a fourth-year point guard? How luxurious is that for you to have that, and how much it lends to being as resilient as they are?
Well, it means a lot, because to go to the 3 Sweet 16s in 5 years, the 2 teams that went back-to-back had experience. They had Jordan Hulls. Cody Zeller was young, but he was a very savvy player, right, at his position. Victor Oladipo grew. We got to grow older together, with that team. And then those guys left. They got drafted in the lottery or they graduated. And so then you're starting with young guys again. And Yogi's been that guy that needed to grow up into being that leader. And so now you take him and his ability to play and lead, and you take Max Bielfeldt, who's gotten tremendously better here, and Nick Zeisloff. The highlight of my day is just watching Nick Zeisloff get a dunk out there. He could barely touch the rim when he got to Indiana as a grad transfer from Illinois State. Now he's in our drills dunking the ball like it's nothing, right? You want that. When guys are getting better, and they know they're getting better in practice, and they can carry it out to the games, all right, and they see each other working the same way. It's not like 75% of the guys work hard, 25% leave as soon as practice is over. That stuff all carries into them. As coaches, we might get mad, but the players lose respect. And these guys have got a tremendous amount of respect for one another, and I think that carries into the resiliency, because they don't feel like they're going to get beat, because they've got a connectedness to one another, and that helps. We may get beat, but the bottom line is, don't lose the game because you gave up on something. And these guys have really worked hard to overcome that and have had some huge victories this year because of that connectedness. And I think that's where the resilience manifests itself.
Okay. Thanks, Coach.
Thanks. Hi, Dan. Hi, Mike.
Thanks, Coach.
Okay, we have Thomas, Yogi, and Nick. Once again, if you have questions for any of them, raise your hand. We'll bring a microphone, name, and outlet before you ask your question. We'll start here in front with Zach.
Zach Drapkin, Babel.com. Thomas, as a freshman, how daunting is it to face teams like Kentucky and North Carolina in the NCAA tournament?
Oh, it feels great to face these teams. When you play for a great team like Indiana in year in the NCAA, you expect to face nothing but the best teams, and it feels great to do that.
Okay, let's start here in row 2. First, let's start at the end of the row. I'm sorry. Yeah, let's go that way, and then we'll come to the end of the row. Go ahead.
Tom is from Rochester, going back to Philly now. Do you have any family or friends coming to the game tomorrow night?
Yeah, I got some family and friends coming.
Just, I guess, who else coming, and what's it going to be like to play in front of them and stuff again?
Just a couple of family members just coming to see a basketball game.
All right, let's go to the end of the row here with Dan.
Dan Gelson, the Associated Press. Yogi, how have you seen the freshmen progress throughout the season? How do you see them impact in this game, considering how influential OG and Thomas were against UK?
Well, I feel like we've been preparing, for moments like this from the summer, beginning of the season, and I feel like they've grown so much with their impact that they have on the court. But not only that, I feel like their preparation has grown, and that's why they've had such a big impact on this team. And we saw the potential in them from the beginning of the season. OG, Juwan, Thomas, Harrison, just the way they go in and play like they're a veteran, like a senior, like me and Nick. They don't go out there and play timid, scared. They make a turnover, get on to the next play. But I'm just happy for them and the way they've stepped up.
We'll go to the 4th row. Bob, go ahead. Just raise your hand real quick so we can see it. Yep.
Yogi, Bob Cooney from the Philadelphia Daily News. A heralded player out of high school staying in college for 4 years is kind of an oddity now. How much have you grown, a senior now? If you look back at yourself as a freshman, as a sophomore, how much have you grown? How much different of a player are you now than you were then?
I feel like I'm very much of a different player. Just the way I've changed my mindset when I go out and play, just different reads. Being a 4-year player, I've been in the game for a long time, so I feel like each game gives you something different a little bit, but most games are pretty much the same throughout. And when you played under, such a great coach as Tom Crean, who's taught you a lot of things, you can be a great player.
And then right behind him, go ahead.
Greg Logan of Newsday for Yogi. You did a great job with Tyler Eulis last week, who obviously is a guy who likes to have the ball in his hands a lot. How is the challenge different this week against Page? He's a pretty good distributor.
Well, you can't let him catch the ball. When he catches the ball, anything can happen for his team. He can dish it off to anybody, score at will, can shoot it from NBA range. So main thing with him is, you limit a guy touches, you limit a guy's attempts.
We'll go to the back row to the end there. Mark, go ahead. Raise your hand, Mark, real quick. Thank you.
Yeah, Yogi, Mark Narducci, the Philadelphia Inquirer. Could you go back to your freshman year and just talk about what that was like with all the veterans? You coming in as kind of a high school All-American and kind of having to take a little bit of a lesser role. What was that like for you then, and what did you learn from those guys that year?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that the other day. Our Sweet 16 when we played Syracuse, I felt like we played out of character, not doing what we do. Without us, we weren't hitting shots or anything like that, but we weren't playing like we did. So, just got to tell these guys to stick to our principles, everything that we do, our coverages, what we like to do on offense, because, we definitely don't want to lose this one.
We'll come all the way over here, front row. Dana, go ahead.
Dana O'Neill with ESPN. Thomas, Coach Crean just talked about your confidence and how it's evolved over the course of the season. How do you feel about your game right now, and how long did it take you to kind of get to where you feel like, okay, this is who I am and who I can be?
I knew who I was and what I had to do and what I could be when I got here. It was just a matter of me just learning the process. Sticking with my teammates. Even when I'm wrong, my teammates always help me out through it. And I just push myself to get better each and every day.
Stay in the front row. Just step up real quick so they can see it.
Aaron Kasner is from Penn Live. From an outsider's perspective, it seems like Coach Crean is often on the hot seat. People talk about his job security a lot. What does that do to you guys, and how do you feel now that you've reached a Sweet 16?
Why don't we go with Nick?
We don't pay attention to too much about that stuff, but Coach Crean has helped us ever since we all got to campus. We always believe in Coach Crean. He believes in us, and he's trying to get us better in every aspect of our lives, whether it's on the court, off the court, in school. It's the full deal for him. He loves each and every one of us, almost like sons, and you know we love him too.
Back here in the front row, Zach.
ZachDrapkinVavel.com. Does facing a #1 seed add any fire for you guys?
Nick.
They're a great team. I mean, they're a #1 seed for a reason. They play well and play fast, and they're very athletic and talented. I mean, it adds some motivation to go out and get them and prove what we're about. But we just, have to stick to playing their guys and doing what we do out there on the court.
All right, we'll go back here. Yep, row 3. I didn't see it back there. Sorry about that.
Jim O'Connell, Associated Press. Nick, Coach Crean just said the highlight of his day was you dunking during the drills. He said you couldn't even get the rim when you got here. Is he telling the truth or exaggerating?
He's not telling the truth with that. I've been able to dunk for quite some time, as much as people might not think I can, but it wasn't a Thomas dunk. So, I mean, it was just a little dunk. I mean, I don't know what he was laughing about with all that, but.
We'll do one final question, Adam, here in the second row.
Thomas, Adam Zagoria, SNY. You went against the Kentucky Bigs. Now you get the North Carolina Bigs. Can you just talk a little bit about the challenges of going up against Bryce and Kennedy and those guys, and also your thoughts on the Kentucky Bigs, Scal, and you obviously had a very good game against Kentucky.
The Kentucky Bigs are great. They're coached by a well-coached coach. Their coaches are out there always trying to push them. They have a great team around them. Fortunately, we got the job done for them against them, and going against UNC. It feels great to finally go against them. Bryce Johnson is a great athlete. Gets out there in transition and carves out space in a low block. So does Meeks. This is a great team with great post players. We just got to stay disciplined and go out there and with the mindset of trying to win the game out there.
Okay, thanks, fellas.